This is the fire only seconds after it began to take off. Winds were gusting 25 miles an hour, and as they blew, the fire roared. This was the first home to go. It is on Buckingham Boulevard. From this point, the fire could not be stopped.
I mean, when we woke up that morning, we knew it was different. Because the wind was weird, it was warm, it was just very strange. And we were making jokes that morning thinking, oh my God, this is earthquake weather, something's bad, it's going to happen. But we didn't think it was going to be a fire.
And I had a big picture window overlooking the ridge where the fire started. So when I looked up Sunday morning, I saw the point on top near Crisley Peak, near Marlborough Terrace where the fire started, and what came from it, what looked like a big dragon of fire sweeping down with this horrible raging sound from the Santa Ana winds. It shocked the hell out of me. It scared me literally to death.
We look up at the Claremont and there is this humongous black sky that is overwhelming. And then the enormity and the fear and the devastation of what might be going on kind of came in on me.
I made the decision to run for it right at the starting of the narrow part of Charing Cross Road here. And as I was running, it was really dark because of the smoke. I had to use the cars that were already burning on the side of the road as sort of like markers for me to run because it was so dark, and I had to stay close to the hillside, and that's the reason why I was burnt more on the right side. My right arm, my right leg were burnt the most. So.
But you kept going.
You know, something just kept telling me to run. You know, I felt that it was so hot that day. If you stopped, it's maybe a contradiction in terms, but you'd almost be frozen. It was so hot. As I reached the end of Charing Cross Road, there were other people running along too. I think it was a teenager slipped and fell, and I picked her up, put her back on her feet, and told her, "Let's get going." She said, "Okay." So I hope she made it out of the fire safely. I didn't see her after that, but as I was picking her up, for a split second, I saw two bodies. I believe somebody told me later it might have been the police officer who died and one of the other people he was helping to try and evacuate at that time. That's something that I'll never forget.
We put ourselves between the flames and the people who were evacuating, and we were trying to lay a big water curtain with our water cannon so these people could escape and get in their cars and leave. In one place we stayed a little too long, and we became trapped, surrounded on all four sides by walls of flame. And we threw all of our equipment up on top, and we all jumped in, and the two gentlemen in the back kind of got in a fetal position, and then we kind of crouched down, rolled up all the windows, and my driver says, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, we don't really have a choice. We have to drive through this." And we had heard earlier that one of the fire departments had gotten stuck and they lost their rig and they had to run for it. We not knowing if these rumors were true, we decided that we had to take a chance and drive through this physical wall of flame. It was probably about 50 foot thick, and it traversed the street kind of an east and west direction. And my driver just stopped, literally holding the steering wheel very tight, and he says, "What would you like me to do?" I said, "Stay in the center of the street and drive through it." I said, "If we make it through this, the beer's on me." So it's kind of funny that the emotions that you experience, the film rolls, and you kind of get up to age 10 or 12 before you're through the flames, and you go, "Okay, we made it. Let's go try to make a difference somewhere else." So you, even as a firefighter, and you're trained not to panic, and you're experiencing all kinds of different conditions all the time. You go on a lot of different calls. There are times when we also get scared, and that was one of them.
Tuesday morning after the Sunday morning fire, I remember waking up in a very dark hotel room and feeling displaced, and that's when I finally really, really cried. I just felt like my most intimate friend died, because my place was like a sanctuary. It was really lovely. I had a lot of beautiful things in my own artwork and an art collection.
On Wednesday, when I first came up here, we parked up by the top of Tunnel Road and walked in. And as I walked by and saw each neighbor's home destroyed, I just cried and cried the more I saw. And afterwards, I walked up through this whole hillside up to the ridge where you can look down on Hiller. And I just cried all the way. I just cried as I went by the emergency vehicles. And it's hard not to cry now thinking about it. It's just such a terrible thing to see so many people whom you care for have so much tragedy in their lives.
There was nothing there, except that when we walked along the side of the house, there in the ashes lay our toothbrush cup that I had made in pottery class at CCAC about 32 years ago. And it was a cup that, when I made it, I made it so it looked really earthy and looked like it had been excavated. And here it was, being excavated from these ashes. And it just looked so good. It was not broken. And my husband and I both kind of wept over this cup. I mean, even the humblest thing looks very beautiful when there's nothing else. And that became, I think, the symbol of total loss.
I just didn't, you were depressed a lot of the time, I think. I mean, in the beginning we denied it, you know, but then afterwards, like stupid little things, you just cry all the time for silly things, and you just feel always sad and depressed and upset, and sort of like a homesick feeling, but you can never go home. It's just like a constant homesick feeling. And then you get really bitter afterwards. It's like, why did this have to happen? You know, things were going so good, it's just not fair. It's really ruined everything that was going on. Like, I'm so far behind in school now, I can't catch up, you know, and it's just not fair. You think, and you want to come back up here and you just can't come back. There's nothing.
For several weeks after the fire, if I smelled somebody's fireplace burning and it wafted into the house that I was staying, I called the fire department once because I was scared. And it really was only somebody's fireplace. But I was very jumpy. And as you know, there were a few subsequent fires up in the Berkeley Hills, and that was scary too. You think, oh, it's going to happen again, like you're in a blitz and in the war, and the bombing could start again.
Gee, I went to a football game about a month ago, and I couldn't stand being in a crowd. I had a feeling of claustrophobia, and to see people sort of having fun by getting drunk and acting stupid and wearing silly hats and these colors, to me just seemed frivolous, and it seemed meaningless, and it just seemed so silly. I couldn't stand being there, so I somehow made it to the seat, which is really hard because I didn't like I was feeling very claustrophobic, and then I left and visited my 92-year-old grandmother.
Yeah, it was really hard going to the Red Cross. Because we went in there to declare ourselves homeless because we knew we didn't have renter's insurance, and we knew we would have to get some sort of funding. So it was suggested to us to go to a shelter and put our names down as homeless people. So we went into the shelter, and I had a very hard time doing that. I'm accustomed being on the other end, helping the homeless people and not being a victim, and all of a sudden I was one of them. I didn't have anything, and having to take things, you know, like the people were really nice. They gave us like little bags with like a toothbrush and shampoo, and it's like I didn't want anybody to see that I had to walk out with this in my hand, that I had nothing.
Being with my wife made a big difference, and if I had been alone and didn't know anyone, it would have been much harder to cope with this. But I just can't say enough about how many people came to us, to have people just one after the other calling, writing, showing up, doing things. You know, it was you just felt that you were buoyed up in a way that is almost beyond words to describe. It would have been impossible for us not to feel that we were very, very special, that we were very, very loved, that we were very, very cared for. Those things made just an immense difference.
We're taking our kids on vacation tomorrow, and we're going to leave till Christmas, because I don't want to be here for Christmas, all the Christmas festivities, parties and all that. So it's interesting. I think we all sort of feel the same way. And our neighbors and friends, most of them everybody I've talked to is going away for the holiday. They just want to avoid sort of the remembrances of the past.
But if losing your possessions really, really ruins your life, then I think you have to think about what kind of life you're living, because your life is in your heart and in your mind and in the people you love and in what you carry around inside your spirit, and everything else is just a prop. And it's important to realize that, and I think we in this neighborhood all got a real good lesson in that insight. But I think that most of the people that I know, my neighbors who I care for, really knew that before, and that's why we're doing so very, very well.
Right across the canyon up there is where the fire started, and we can see some activity of some, rebuilding going on up there. The day of the fire, that's where the fire started, and it raced throughout the whole canyon in less than 15 minutes. And it came down this way. A lot of our neighbors down at the end of the street, well, a couple of our neighbors didn't make it out because, there was hardly any time for any warning. There was no warning that day at all. And people, have expressed some concerns or some complaints that there wasn't enough warning. But on a day like that, I don't think, even if there was adequate warning, there still would have been some casualties, I think, that day.
Guys were really angry that they put their lives on the line for other cities in the hopes that they could make a difference, and then they saw Berkeley and Oakland being chastised. And once we came to understand why people act that way, and through the counseling and mediation processes of peer group counseling and the critical incident debriefing, and then the follow-ups, we all became comfortable, and we were able to say, okay, that's your opinion, we respect it.
And I think I was one of the last persons to see the police officer who perished alive too. My last image of him was he was trying to beat the flames off his trousers as he was getting into his patrol car to leave the hill. But the thing I'll never forget about him is the calmness. I mean, he didn't panic at all. I mean, he was trying to help people right up to the end. And I like to think that if all the police officers were like him, we're in no danger. I mean, he was a brave man. He was a brave man.
Well, I've experienced a lot of things this year that have also seemed to put life in perspective. My grandmother died just recently, and also a friend of mine, her daughter just died in a drowning accident, which was really terrible. And when these things happen, it seems that the fire was so far away, and that was so much less important. All I lost was a house. These people have lost loved ones, and that to me is really different. And my life is back in order right now, so the fire seems very far away. It doesn't really bother me anymore.
I think that I feel more vulnerable in general. I still feel that I was made vulnerable by the fire taking all of my possessions, so that it's more difficult for me to handle the vicissitudes of the marketplace the way I used to be able to, and I've been in business 22 years. However, at the same time, since there was the liberating factor, I'm also able to go with the flow. Nothing is so extraordinarily painful or bad compared to what happened in the fire.
I've had just tremendous problems at work and just beyond belief. And while I don't myself directly relate them to the stress I've had from the fire, I certainly believe that perhaps that was an important factor in making me a little bit less capable of dealing with problems there. So that's been the one major thing for me that I can't really explain. It's the thing about dealing with this fire and dealing with the aftermath is that it's sort of like the hurdles in one of the Olympic events, or the steeplechase, perhaps is a better analogy. It's one thing after the next, and you try and deal with them. And for example, the bane of most people's existence has been insurance. I mean, there's no question that the insurance companies, by and large, did everything they could to defer dealing with problems, to try and stonewall people, to hope they'd go away, to minimize the amount of money they would have to pay, to try and divide, to try and demoralize. So when that was something that we hadn't solved yet, I mean, it was very draining for us.
I think my advice mostly to people who go through something like this is to, first of all, rely on your friends and your family, but have patience with yourself. Somehow find out what reactions to expect. You're going to go through a whole lot of different reactions. You're going to feel as though you're not yourself. The way that you handle things are going to be differently. And I think you have to give yourself time to recuperate. And just because other people say that you should be okay does not mean that you're okay. And you just have to take time. Time will heal, but you have to give yourself time to get over it, I think. Because there are a lot of different reactions that you're going to go through: depression, anger, fear, sadness, and it just has to take its course. And to get as much support as you need, some people only need their family, other people need counseling. And I think you should try and know for yourself what you're going to need and seek out those resources and use them.
We've also found a tremendous amount of support and help from our neighbors. Some of them who've sold or gone away or have been demoralized by the process or just too busy. We haven't seen them much. But the few of us that have stayed in touch have been a very good support group for each other. If nothing else, we can just call up and vent.
It's a process that you have to have faith and keep going towards, because at the same time the pain is there. And I suppose I'd rather feel it than suppress it and have it wreak havoc in my body.
Form groups to help each other, and to realize, that only by working together are you really going to deal with the tragedies very often.
Yeah, I think I kind of live life more and view life differently. I kind of live more for each day now instead, and I tend to to try and take time out to do things for myself now. And I don't look in the future. Like before I would put off things, but now it's like, no, I want to do it now rather than put it off for a later date, because it's just, nothing's for certain anymore. So yeah, in that way I think I view things very differently.
You just view life a lot differently. You know, it's kind of like you got a second chance, but yet you don't look at it as being, because of our profession, you don't dwell on it really, but there was enough of a jolt in terms of the experience that it just woke me up to believe that, hey, life is very strange. It can be taken away from you at any time. And it just helped me realize that I should just live each day as I can to the best of my abilities and try to do good. Try to, you know, try to create some good karma.
My God, I've never seen anything like that!
I had a dream, a childhood dream that has come true, that of being a firefighter and helping a child or saving a life or two. It's an exciting profession, one filled with joy, tempered with times that can make you sad, like experiencing the loss of a comrade, someone's son, mother, or dad. Every time the bell rings, a question comes to you. Will this be my last call, or will there be others too? It's a profession filled with dedication and pride, motivated by teamwork and stimulated by fear. Then there are those calls where you have to struggle to fight back your tears. So if I don't come back from a call, please tell my friends and family that I love them all. For I was happy living this dream come true. God bless my comrades and citizens too. For I gave my life for you, fulfilling this childhood dream that had come true. It's still kind of an emotional thing for me to read and reflect back.